Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I want to talk about the Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. It's still in the news, and there's just a lot of interesting aspects to this case. And I thought I'd use it as an opportunity to help just educate people about the immigration system in general. I mean, there's a lot of procedural things that have happened in this case that are obviously very unique. Um, And so I want to just break this situation down step by step and just in a very factual way. I'm not here to make political statements or take positions. I'm here as a lawyer to help educate you guys. So I want to use this as an opportunity to help educate viewers about the immigration process in the United States and how this system works or how it's supposed to work. Okay. So if you're here to hate Trump or to love Trump or whatever, you're in the wrong place. This is just going to be a factual legal analysis and just a walkthrough of this whole case. Okay. So let's start at the beginning when Mr. Garcia arrived in the United States. I've got some notes here and I can see that it looks like he entered the United States without inspection back in 2011. Okay, so that means he came into the United States without proper papers or visas. He came into the country illegally. And he lived here, so that means he's been here for like almost 14 years. So he's lived for most of those years in Prince George's County, Maryland, and he eventually married a U.S. citizen. I don't know if he ever tried applying for a green card or waivers or any of those types of things. I don't know what his criminal background is. That may be public information. I don't know what that is myself. I haven't looked into it. So if anybody knows, you can put it in the comments section below, I guess. But I do know that back in 2019, he had an immigration hearing because he was in removal proceedings, and that is when an immigration judge issued a removal order against him based on a denied asylum claim. However, and importantly, he was granted protection from deportation. Even though his asylum claim was denied, he was granted what's called withholding of removal. Okay? Withholding of removal, in case you don't know what that is, it's different than asylum. So asylum gives you a pathway to a green card. Withholding of removal is basically a shield from deportation, but it doesn't give you permanent resident status in the United States like asylum does. Basically, withholding of removal is going to protect you from being deported back to your home country. Okay? So as of 2019, whatever date this was approved, Mr. Garcia was granted withholding of removal, which means he could not be deported to El Salvador. Okay, that's important because that's going to come up later with what the government's trying to do by deporting him to a third country, right? You might be wondering, why would he be denied asylum, but yet he would get approved for withholding of removal? There's a lot of reasons why, and I don't know the facts of his particular case, but there could be many reasons why an asylum would get denied. There could be some kind of a procedural bar. Maybe he filed after the 1-year deadline, or maybe he did have some criminal convictions in his background that made him inadmissible, where he couldn't be eligible for asylum. Maybe there was a transit ban, or there could be all kinds of different things. I don't know the details of his case. But for whatever reason, the asylum got denied and the withholding of removal was granted, okay? So he could legally stay in the United States without being repatriated to El Salvador under that order, okay? So this all started back in March when ICE detained Mr. Garcia during one of his ICE check-ins. So as part of the withholding of removal, he is required to periodically check in with ICE, which is normal. A lot of people have to do that. Sometimes they have an annual check-in or a monthly check-in. or whatever periodic, whatever was ordered that he had to do. He was going to his check-in, and that's where he was detained, and that happened on March 12th. And that's also when he got deported mistakenly to El Salvador. The government later described the deportation as an administrative error, which is true. He should not have been deported to El Salvador. So this is when it kind of gets complicated, because there's different cases that have been filed on behalf of Mr. Garcia. The first one is a civil suit, which is brought in the Federal District of Maryland. Okay, that's a federal court case challenging the deportation. And this was filed through his attorneys and through his family, seeking his return. And that is when a federal judge actually issued an order to the government to facilitate his return. That went up on appeal, and it eventually went up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court themselves held that the government has to take steps to facilitate his return from El Salvador. Obviously, the government didn't want to do that, but they had to obey the Supreme Court on that. So, as we know, eventually he did come back. I think it was probably kind of a way for them to save face, because when he came back, I think it was on June 6th, we're in August now, at the time of this video, but he came back to the United States sometime in early June. I think it was June 6th, to face a federal indictment on trafficking charges, conspiracy to transport, and transporting non-citizens. So they say he was brought back to the U.S. to face criminal charges, which is, true, but he was also brought back because they made a mistake. Okay, that case is still pending. And so those are the two cases that are currently pending for Mr. Garcia. He's got the civil suit, which is in the Federal District of Maryland, and he has the criminal case, which was filed in the Middle District of Tennessee. Right now, I believe he's out. He's not in detention, but he does, I think he has an ICE detainer. He has to do his ICE check-ins still. And let me talk a little bit about the Maryland case, because that civil federal case is basically, I haven't researched all of the details about this, but I believe the purpose of that is basically to ensure compliance with if he does get removed, that there has to be certain kind of like safeguards in place. For example, the judge's order in the Maryland case requires the government to provide notice to Mr. Garcia before any removal. So most recently, the court ordered a 72 hours notice to the attorneys before any deportation to a third country could happen. Okay? So that was ordered by the federal judge in the Maryland case. Now, so today is August 25th. 3 days ago, and this is kind of what prompted me to look into this a little bit more. 3 days ago, okay, so 72 hours ago, he got released from criminal custody in Tennessee and was returned to Maryland to await trial there. Okay, so he was subject to that 72-hour notice requirement for removal. And now ICE I think they fulfilled that requirement, and it looks like ICE is trying to pursue removal again, a second time. So, but not to El Salvador, but I think the latest report I saw was to Uganda, that they're trying to remove him to a third country, because remember, under the withholding of removal, he can't be removed to El Salvador, but that doesn't foreclose that he could be deported to another country that would be willing to accept him. So as of today, I know that he's reported to the ICE field office, which is in Baltimore, in Maryland, and he's been detained as far as I know, and he's facing removal to Uganda. I'm sure it's going to get challenged in court. Um, I don't necessarily know how far that's going to go. It's looking like he's probably going to get removed. He is subject to the final removal order, which the government could technically send him to a third country. That is where things stand as of today, as far as we know. I know he has court today, but that's kind of what's going on, right? So I hope that just kind of gives you guys a brief, kind of a concise walkthrough of this legal situation, why he was deported and why he came back. I really wanted to highlight the withholding of removal because I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what that is. They didn't understand why there was a mistake to deport him to El Salvador. The mistake really wasn't the deportation itself. It was the removal to El Salvador specifically. Okay. So the immigration judge's order did not allow that. Right. So that's why the government is seeking removal to a third country, which might seem kind of strange to us because we really haven't heard of that in recent years. But legally, the government can do that as long as Uganda is willing to accept him and to provide, a place for him to be removed there. So that is kind of the general situation of what's going on. Obviously, there's way more specifics in that case, but I just wanted to give a general overview of this for you guys to help you understand at a very high level what's going on and answer any questions that you might have had.